This episode explores complex and sensitive themes. We are not saying music causes crime, nor are we targeting specific genres wholesale. We aim to discuss the intersection of artistic expression and the economics of incarceration, particularly the role of private prisons. For all y'all out there that want to be gangster, you know where the most gangsterous people are? Prison.
So, tell me, do you think record labels sometimes incentivize or pressure their artists to make more violent or criminal personas for marketing?
Definitely. I know for a fact that it's pushed for certain artists to create certain types of music for a certain type of market. Today we're going to be talking about, is there a relation between the private prison systems and the music that glorifies criminal activity or criminal conduct? So, private prisons are corporations contracted by governments to run correctional facilities for profit. We have major players like Core Civic and Geo Group.
There were 28 states that was using privatized prisons in 2022. So can you imagine how many more there are in 2025?
Well, yeah, you know, when everything is about capitalism, everything gets capitalized.
And Georgia was one of those places.
Definitely. Let's talk about artistic expression versus incitement. Music is often a reflection of harsh realities or systemic poverty and lived experiences in marginalized communities. It's social commentary or storytelling, not necessarily endorsement. So if you want to think about back in the days, NWA, for instance, or some of the earlier gangster rap in the early 1990s, a lot of it was people just really talking about or reiterating what they saw going on in their neighborhoods every day. And in a lot of impoverished neighborhoods, or what would you say, like low income neighborhoods,
they was rapping about their experiences.
Exactly. So it wasn't really promotion. It was just giving other people insight into the harsh realities that they experienced every day.
Yes. I feel like when the record label seen that would be able to sell and it became so big, they figure out a way to make profit off of it.
Well, yeah, first of all, it tearing down certain communities like the black and brown communities, I think that was a plus for them. And we all know who them are. It was a plus for them. You know, being able to make money off of it was just like the icing on the cake. Now, some of the lyrics glorify violence, drug dealing, or other crimes, potentially influencing vulnerable listeners or normalizing destructive behavior.
They were told not to sign any more political rappers, any more rappers that had messages in their music.
No positivity.
It was all to be gangster rap music that they promoted and put out. The first emotion I felt was shocked, because I was definitely taken back by this, just knowing the level of evil that's involved. The second emotion I felt was anger. Anger because it's not enough for them to exploit our culture and make all the money off of it. Mm-hmm. Because let's keep it real, the industry has never been favorable towards the artist. Never. But they're going to go beyond the artist to get the artist to influence and lure in the consumer, which they knew at the time were mainly minorities.
Yep.
In other words, keep promoting gangster rap so that the youngsters will be influenced by them, will incite them to want to act like them, and it's a very good chance they'll end up in their prison.
Yeah.
So they're getting paid twice. They're getting paid from the artists they signing, and then they're getting paid from the people that these artists influence that goes to prison. They making the killing.
Because the youth, or I mean even some young adults, may hear the music and they think that the activity being talked about is cool, or everybody else is listening to it, so I have to listen to this as well, or this is what constitutes me being black, listening to gangster rap or drill music in order to be cool and not be called a lame.
Today we're exploring where this music takes us and how far down the rabbit hole our youth our youth is going to prove themselves and to live up to the lyrics in this music.
And now, to be fair, some old folk songs, they had songs about outlaws or criminals, and some punk rock went against the establishment, like it was anti-establishment, and some of it was popular but not really mainstream as much as some of the destructive gangster rap music or drill music is today. I don't think it was equal as far as popularity.
When you say equal as far as popularity, what do you mean?
Like the gangster rap music and the drill music is more popular than those folk songs that were talking about outlaws or the anti-establishment punk rock music.
Yeah, because the anti-establishment was going against the system. And right now, the system wants everybody to be in line. So we don't want any music to go against the system. Let's make music to go against each other and kill each other. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, that's what it seems like. Like the question you said earlier, do record labels incentivize artists who make this type of music? They definitely do, because otherwise more conscious or positive rap would be popular, and it's not. So the music that has the violent criminal personas, I'm about to pull up with the chopper and chop something up, all that stuff, that's what's popular, that's what's popping, and the youth doesn't realize how destructive it is. And it's even worse when they get out here and try to emulate what they hear in this music.
When they emulate what they hear in the music, I wonder, do they understand how detrimental that is? And it's glamorized in the music, but it has severe repercussions in real life. Like in real life, you're facing prison time. When you take a life, that person doesn't have another life. I mean, it's over for you and the person.
Yes, it definitely is. But, they don't think about that until hindsight kicks in after they're in jail for how many ever life sentences. I'm sure they regret it at that point. They wish they wouldn't have engaged in whatever activity that they engaged in that may have been influenced by the lifestyles portrayed in this music.
So are the record label owners entangled in the private prison system? Like, do they have a share in that? Like, as far as shares of stock? Do they profitize off of that as well as profitizing off of the music?
Who benefits and profits off our bickering and our division? I don't know their names, Bill, but if you follow the money, you go high enough, you start to see literally the same people who own the labels own private prison. It seems really kind of suspicious, if you want to say that word, that the records that come out are really geared to push people towards that prison industry.
Well, if you look behind the scenes, I'm sure you'll see that a lot of the people that own the record labels, and I'm talking about the people that you don't see, the ones behind the scenes, the ones who own the building and the name of the record label, not the subsidiary label, the major label. A lot of them do have investments in these private prison companies. And so in order to keep their investment safe, they have to make sure the private prisons are making money. Now, if it bleeds, it leads. That's the mentality that they pretty much have as far as marketing. So, who is this affecting?
Our community.
It's definitely affecting our community, and the people listening. It's not just people involved in crimes. It's people who just want to be part of the in crowd, or young adults and teens who, they need a group to belong to. If their friends are all listening to this music, a lot of them are going to listen to the music as well, because they don't want to be left out, or they don't want to be outcasted.
So are you saying the drill music pushes the violence that leads to our young men getting in jail, and the record labels are profiting off of this?
The music definitely influences a lot of people. Now, if you hear in a song, so and so did this, so I pulled up and did XYZ, if they get in a similar situation, guess what they're gonna do? XYZ, you know? So you have to remember, like, the youth is, their mind is malleable, and they always want something to belong to, whether it be a group. That's the main reason why people join gangs, because they want something to belong to, especially if things aren't going so well at home. You know, they're looking to fill that empty void with something. And a lot of times that's friends or peers or gangs or what have you. And then on top of that, the music doesn't help at all, because the influence is strong. It's very strong. Of course, if you live in that type of environment where there's a lot of crime and you see it often just walking outside your door, you will relate to it, because that's your reality, you know? I think the problem comes in when you never had to live that type of lifestyle, but you'll go and rap about it and talk about it because that's what's popular. But you don't know anything about it because you've never had to live your life like that. Nor do you live your life like that right now.
It's a lot of college. It's a lot of college educated rappers out there that haven't lived that life, that's promoting drug use and promoting gang violence. They may not be promoting or pushing gang violence, but they definitely promote drug use. And a lot, I'm not going to name any artists because I can't, well, I can prove it, but I'm just not going to name any artists. But those artists I don't listen to.
You know, the private prisons get paid per inmate, per diem. So there's definitely an incentive to keep their prisons filled. If you're getting paid money per person in your facility, then hey, we got to keep these beds filled. And sometimes the floors too, because they have ran out of rooms in a lot of these prisons. Between 1999 and 2019, the number of people held in private prisons increased by 32%, while the overall prison population grew by only 3%. And this comes from the Sentencing Project analysis of BJS data. Nobody's looking into this because it's capitalism as well. If there was no crime, guess what? The police don't have a job. FBI doesn't have a job. And if nobody's getting locked up, there's no use for the prisons because nobody's in them.
My question is, who's profiting off of these private prisons? That's what I want to know.
Well, I say always follow the money. Always follow the money. You'd be surprised who has stakes in some of these private prisons. What's been going on recently, y'all know all of these immigrants have been getting rounded up by this latest administration. Well, you know, the federal system, particularly for immigration detention under ICE, relies heavily on private prisons. So, you know, when they're getting all of these immigrants together, they're taking them to these private prisons. And those are more beds being filled. That's more money going to the private prisons. You know, so it kind of makes me wonder, do they really want to get rid of immigration, or do they want to just detain the people to fill up these prisons?
Wow.
Gives you something to think about. Companies like Core Civic and Geo Group spend millions annually on lobbying. For example, over the last couple of decades, they've spent upwards of $25 million on lobbying, and they've been contributing to campaigns as well. So one thing you have to realize is a lot of companies give money to politicians for certain reasons, for certain agendas, for certain bills to get passed. You know, so everything ends up being tied together. You got the record labels pushing the artists to put out certain music. You've got people being influenced by this music, end up committing crimes, getting locked up. They're fueling the private prisons and the funeral industry.
Wow, I forgot about that one.
Oh yeah. While proponents claim cost savings, studies often show mixed results. with some indicating private prisons cut corners on staffing, training, and programming, potentially impacting safety and rehabilitation. So, they tell us, the general public, that prison, and going to jail and prison is supposed to be for rehabilitation. They sentence you, they give you all of this time, and during that time, you're supposed to be going through a rehabilitation process. Meaning, when you get back out, you're different. You don't want to commit crime anymore to end up back in prison. But we all know that is not the truth. And as far as safety in these prisons, if the staff is not trained when there's a riot or someone's about to get stabbed, they cannot handle these situations. A lot of inmates die in prison, and it's a problem. Now, we could say don't do the crime if you can't do the time. But how you gonna do the time if you dead? So, it's something to think about. Is it a good thing or a bad thing, these private prisons? If they're getting the money for the people that's housed, but they're not using the money for the things they need to use the money for, such as training. That's you got to train the COs to deal with the prisoners. Mm-hmm. You have to train them to deal with certain situations. So if it's not safe to go to prison, when you go there, you might make it out, you might not. It's a toss up.
Well, in January 2021, former President Joe Biden signed an executive order ending the use of privatized prisons because he's seen that a lot of prisoners wasn't getting rehabilitated.
Well, that's facts, and that's been facts for a very long time. Even before Biden got into office. You go to prison. That's why the recidivism rate was so high, because you get out of prison, you go right back in. If you've been rehabilitated, when you get out of prison, you don't go back.
So why are privatized prisons still in existence?
Capitalism. Making money. The almighty dollar. Mm-hmm.
In all our conversations that we had here on Conversations 101, it seems as capitalism is the root of everything. So, do you think this country will ever end capitalism?
No, because it's a capitalistic country and society. Everything is about money, and the capitalism in itself is not bad. So don't think that I'm saying capitalism is bad. Capitalism is not bad. The issue is when you have greedy people running the whole system. That's when things get bad, because now you have things that are being done that's morally wrong in order to make money. And they don't care about the health of people. They don't care about the safety of people. They don't care about the well-being of people, as long as they can make the most money possible. How many mansions do you need? How many bedrooms do you need in your house? How many cars you can't drive 15 cars at the same time? It's crazy.
I just figured I'd mention that, since capitalism is at the root of everything.
And not only that, speaking about back to the private prisons, there's been plenty lawsuits about how the prisons are unsafe. We had a situation in Fulton County where a young man was locked up and he was pretty much getting eaten alive by bed bugs. Now, that's not a private prison, it's a jail, but that's just an example of people not being trained well enough to handle certain situations. If it's like that in a jail, a county jail, imagine how much more pronounced that can be in a private prison.
Why would it be more pronounced in a private prison?
Because private prisons are way away from the main cities and urban areas.
So it's not state ran.
No, it is state ran. Prisons are state. That's Department of Corrections for the state. But they're in such rural places, you don't know what's going on out there. They could be doing any and everything. You don't hear about every inmate that dies in these prisons.
Well, answer this question for me, just for me and the people that's trying to get a handle on what do privatized prisons, are they entwined with state prisons? How is that?
Well, yeah. So when you go to prison, it's a state prison, but some of them are privatized. So it's like they're being contracted by the state to hold inmates. So you got state prisons and you have private prisons, which are all being funded by the state. But the privatized prisons, when they get their money, it goes to that particular company. It's like a company.
To those investors.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of these artists, like we mentioned before, they feel pressured to make this type of music, even if they don't want to. You can make a song about something that's positive or, uplifting, and they're coming back to you like, nah, man, we need something a little harder, man, something that's gonna go hard in the streets. So now you thinking about your career, and dang, if I don't make this type of music, it may be over with for me. I got a family to feed too. So is that artist going to make that type of music, or are they going to say, nah, I'm gonna put out this positive song? So that's what the artists are dealing with. They have to deal with the pressure. And then you have those artists that's really gangster, and there are some of those do exist. They out here rapping, they being an artist, but they out here committing crime. Then they going in and rapping about it on their music.
So they telling on themselves.
Exactly, because their lyrics are getting used in court. They try to use song lyrics in the whole YSL trial. And look at Bobby Shmurda. They use his lyrics in court as well. And now, Young Thug ended up not going to prison, even though he pleaded guilty. But Bobby Shmurda, he did go to prison. But that's what comes with the territory. If you out here doing this stuff and then you rapping about it in your song, they using your song in court. That's not looking good at all. Can we use music as a tool for change?
Yeah, we can.
We do have artists out here that actually talk about, things that we can do to bring about change in our communities. They talk about what's going on, like the injustices that's going on in the communities rather than glorifying drugs and criminal activity. I can name some of the artists. Lupe Fiasco. Kendrick Lamar is a very conscious rapper. Listen to The Roots and Black Thought. There are some artists that do have a positive message in their music. Even artists like Common. But if you notice, these artists aren't very mainstream or popular.
That's because they're not pushed. They're not pushed because that wouldn't profit the privatized prison environment. Like, they're not pushed because that wouldn't feed into the negativity which push people to commit crimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the music is positive.
Definitely. It seems like anything to uplift certain communities is shut down or overshadowed by something that's more negative. We're just talking about the music. We haven't gotten into the movies, or other media or social media. We haven't gotten into that, but we're talking about music on this particular episode. So
let me say this. I'm reading an article here that said the Federal Bureau of Prisons ended the use of privately owned prisons on November the 30th, 2022. As of 2025, there are 0 federal inmates in private institutions. 0 federal inmates. That's federal. Not because the order only applied to federal prisons. States can continue to contract with for-profit prisons. So they're not federal. They're not under federal. They're not being used in the federal prison system, but they are still being used in our state prisons. And they're being used to do the work or to manufacture goods. Some of the clothes that you buy, some of your tags on your car, some of your lingerie, some of your furniture. It's like slavery, basically. It's like slavery.
But that's the whole purpose of the 13th Amendment. if people, did their research and
Yes.
knew about the Constitution and its amendments,
Yes.
it says that no one can be used for involuntary servitude unless they've been convicted of a crime.
Yes.
So it's definitely slavery, but it's lawful slavery.
Of course.
So that's something to consider as well. You shouldn't want to get out here and doing these crimes unless you want to go back to slavery.
So if you have that mentality where you just don't give a fuck and you just want to kill your brother, man, and you're literally sentencing yourself back to slavery. Think about it like that. I mean, that's crazy to think that you're willing to go back to slavery just because you want to commit a crime, or just because you want to be seen as a big man or a big woman or a bad dude. I mean, come on now, is it worth it?
Like I said, some of the most gangster, hardest, most big, hey, don't mess with me type dudes, they not out here on these streets. They in prison.
Being slaves.
If you want to be that type of person, you want to see that type of person, it's not out here on these streets. So, just keep that in mind. And if you're an artist and you want, or you want to become an artist, think outside of the box. Don't do what everybody else is doing just because it's popular. Create a different narrative. Mm-hmm. Reach one, teach one. Try to change things in a positive direction with your music like they used to do back in the day. Do y'all remember We Are the World? You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Do you remember songs like Self-Destruction? Where all these rappers came together to get a positive message going. Do y'all remember groups like Public Enemy? Like, come on, create a different narrative so that we can be moving in a more positive direction and we can start moving forward instead of backward.
Yes.
And monitor what your children listen to. Be more involved in introducing them to other forms of music. Just because you're black doesn't mean you have to strictly listen to rap music or hip hop.
I grew up on everything. I grew up on rock, pop, jazz. I will listen to opera just myself. I grew up on everything.
Yeah, so we're going to conclude this episode. Thank y'all for having a conversation with Conversations One-on-One. Y'all don't forget to check out Malicious Intentions. The link will be in the description below. Do not forget to like, subscribe, share the video. If you know somebody that's listening to this gangster rap and trying to portray this lifestyle because they think it's cool, share this video with them. They may get some knowledge and see how this whole system is working. And they may decide to change their life, or their friends, or their mentality. Once again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.